To say that the world changed after 2020 is an understatement. We're all aware of all these changes, but it seems like day by day we're morphing into this whole new world, and there isn't really a rule book to guide us on where to go to and how to act. I mean, firstly, everything right now seems like it's online and it was built for the online environment. If you sort of think about it, the internet was sort of created as this separate place. Yeah, it's its own self. The online world and the offline world was separate entities, and you sort of like live in the real world, and after that, maybe you surf the internet and have little peace and enjoyment in the online world, and that was pretty much it. But right now, it seems like we're living in the online world and we only use the offline world to sort of just navigate our day-to-day lives. Everything is online and everyone is online. And even if you jump in and say the cure to this is, just going back offline, I think we're past that point. Even if you try this, like I did for about 1.5 years, you'll immediately realize that everything has been consumed by online culture. And so you're sort of left in isolation if you try and go offline. Now, the interesting thing is that it almost seems like there's no end to this, because even if you get back online, for example, even if you try and communicate with people online, you immediately realize that just because people have their phones, these communication devices, doesn't necessarily mean that they're communicating. So this has had me thinking, well, what's really the ploy here? What's kind of like the point of all of this? And what has changed, the major thing that has shifted from the pre-COVID world to the post-COVID world, the pre-2020 world to the post-2020 world, is the shift from creating and sharing to consumption. So before then, the reason why there's so much culture, and even right now, the whole 2016 thing trending and all that, is because there was a culture of creating and sharing. That was pretty much what we did. We lived in the real world, and whatever we created in the real world, we just used the online spaces to share it. But right now, it seems like mobile phones, televisions, all of this gadgets, devices, plus social media, all of it is just geared to consumption. People are online, but they're all in their tiny little echo chambers, and because of that, it's just bland and boring. It seems like everything is a remix and everything is just recycled material from past decades. There used to be a show I used to like to watch on Nat Geo whereby they would go through all the decades, yeah? And so they would start by like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. I would have all of these great moments. Up until the 2000s and 2010s, you can clearly see that they're distinguishable, they're different, it's like the fashion, everything from the music to the art to the movies, everything is just its own, yeah? And every generation was sort of proud of that. But then now you look at the 2020s and everything is sort of like this TikTok remix, yeah? Just kind of like clips of the best moments from previous decades, and there's nothing really original, there's nothing fresh. That all the movies are either superhero junk, recycled franchises, and all the music is just, sort of like made for the TikTok algorithm, and everything has to be monetized, and there's all of this progressive woke feminist bullshit. Sort of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. I mean, you look at seminal moments, yeah, over the past, and you ask yourself, well, what are those in the future, what are the seminal moments that we're going to look at in the 2020s? Is it going to be, short viral clips? That seems very shallow. And that's the problem that I have with the destruction of these quality moments, these quality, unique experiences that mark a generation, they mark a time. Because right now, what you have is just this very shallow, short form, trying to instant gratification, dopamine right now, and not anything that has any depth that can last for a very, very long time, for a very, very long time. So because of this, because of, what I talked about, everything is sort of like optimized to be online and, consumed right now and not really have any element of depth and delayed gratification and, and mastery, then everything is just shallow and it kind of like dilutes dilutes the decade of the 2020s. Perhaps the biggest irony to throw on top of all of this is the fact that everything has grown even more expensive, including technology. Now, you would like to think that, a technology will start at the highest price point and then get cheaper as things get, more, as we get more productive, as we kind of like innovate more and so on. But everything, including technology, has become a lot more expensive. Now, of course, I've covered all of this and I've talked a lot about the detrimental effects of inflation. But when you listen to stories, of previous generations, inflation was never a worry. It was always there, but it was never a worry. It seems like right now, inflation is pretty much like a top concern because incomes are not growing, prices are rising. So the question is, how do you necessarily navigate this world? When everything is too expensive, even going out, you almost immediately realize that the default has become, I'm going to stay in my house, I'm going to stay in my room, and I don't think that that's a pretty much fair way to live life. But what are we to do about it? Because, the economy is the economy. And one of the things that the economy has done is that it has decided that it's going to reshape everything and attack young people for no absolute reason. I really can't understand the youth unemployment rate because when I look through history, yes, there have been periods of crises. Yes, there have been periods of, just like wars and so on. But still, there was sort of like a way out. Yeah. And there was a bounce back. I can't connect beyond the fact that how has this happened for like 6 years straight? During COVID, the 2020 coronavirus, I remember they used to bring in this, billionaires and CEOs and so on, and they would say that the recovery from COVID would take about 2 to 3 years, and then everything would be back to normal. And then there was the Russia-Ukraine war, and then the Israel war, and I don't know how many other wars. Now we're in the war in Iran that's disrupting everything. How much longer is this like going to last?
Tim Teslook is set to graduate from the University of Hong Kong in a couple of weeks. The 24-year-old studied maths and computer science, thinking it would serve him well when he entered the job market. The number of full-time job vacancies suitable for university graduates in Hong Kong fell by 61% between 2022 and last year. Roles in IT and administration saw the sharpest drops. Recruiters say it's partly due to the overall economic conditions and the advent of AI as companies rethink where to allocate their money.
There are questions around this entry-level work, called the grunt work, the financial modeling, the analysis. These are areas where AI and the tools to support it are most widely deployed.
The young and unemployed soon become the old and unemployable.
But he is warning of the long-term impact. The fear is that hiring fewer graduates puts the talent pipeline that produces future managers at risk.
Now, having a trend for 2 or 3 years is sort of okay because you have some time to sort of like recover after that. But it's been 6 years and there's still no end in sight. And that's the main worry. Now, because of this, there's been a lot of discussion about, Gen Z's mental health and so on. But what people fail to realize is that it's not really a mental health issue. It's really the fact that we have changed the dynamics of the world. We have changed the world and there is no rule book. And because of this, of course, People will panic, people will be anxious, people will be depressed, and it's young people mainly because the lie they have been sold to from the moment they literally like stepped on this earth is if you work hard, then you will, get to rise up. Now even that has been thrown out of the books. So because of this, young people are angry, they're pissed, and a great majority of them are also on one end, that's on one end, and on the other end, a great majority of them are also giving up. And that's to worry. So all of this seems really heavy, and it seems like, how can you pin it down on 2020? I'm not trying to pin the blame on 2020. I'm just trying to say that there was a shift at this particular point in time. Now, I'm sure we've all seen, like, the Gen Z protests all around the world and so on. It's not just here in Kenya. But the interesting thing is about this war is that it seems that it's a war with no resolution. Yeah, there's no clear path to a resolution. And I'm not just talking about, the political war. I'm talking about everything now being a war. So there's a gender war, because the feminist movements and, its propaganda machine have decided to split men and women into different factions. There is the class war, which is, probably the greatest continuous war forever, because it's always been a war against the rich versus the poor. But because of all of these factors that I've mentioned, the rich and poor divide has grown really, really rapidly. I mean, if you think about it, for a majority of the last 60 to 70 years, the middle class has sort of been the antidote to the class war. But now, with a diminishing middle class, there's nothing else to do other than fight. So the gender war, the class war, let's not forget good old-fashioned tribalism and all of this. And it's all just brewing in this pot. There's the question that I think not a lot of people are asking of, what's the resolution to all this? And, what's the path to like a better society? That's the main reason that I was making this video, not to just sort of rant about all the differences, but to sort of get to the point of the whole notion of a human being is the fact that we have, we have the soul and we have the mind. We have this part of us that is able to actually solve problems and get to a better place. And perhaps we have forgotten that because of all the noise and all the social media and all of that. And we've forgotten that the real enemy is all the participants of the system who are trying to suppress freedom and liberty. You have to realize that most of the conspiracy theories are no longer conspiracy theories. And one of them was when the World Economic Forum said, you will own nothing and you will be happy. The sad reality right now is most people don't own anything and they're depressed.